I've spent over $200,000 on coaching, and I would do it all over again without hesitation. In fact, tomorrow, me and my team are jumping into a brand new program with a coach I've been wanting to work with now for years, one of the best in the industry, and I couldn't be more excited. And what I'm going to break down in this video, it's the simple truth that if you want better clients, you have to become one first. The highest earning entrepreneurs and service businesses that I know are the ones that are always investing in themselves, their growth, and their team, and are always looking for where the blind spot, where the bottleneck might be. And there's typically no better way to do that than with the right consultant or coach. And in this video, I'm gonna walk through how coaching has shaped every single business that I've built, how I've actually spent all that money in coaching, and what I do to make sure that I get an ROI every single time. I'm gonna share what makes a coaching investment actually work, how to think about coaching if you're serious about scaling. Let's dive in. I know I've spent a lot of money on coaching over the years, and this isn't a flex, this is just a pattern that I've noticed over the years. And it actually started with my very first coach. Actually, it was a mentor of mine who I looked up to before I started my first successful business, a service business. It was a photography studio. And this mentor had been a photographer for years, had amassed a pretty big following, and was working with the kind of clients that I wanted to work with, was running the kind of business that I wanted to run. And when I sat down with him and asked for his best advice in getting started, he gave me two pieces of advice. He said, Gabriel, you need to take 100,000 photos this year. And what he was telling me with that was, hey, you need to get really good at your craft. You need to, if you're going to sell this service, you need to get really good at delivering it. So just get into the work. And then the second thing he did, he said, and you need to read this book. And he slid the E-Myth Revisited across the table. And E-Myth is a book all about how to build a systems-based business. If you haven't read it, it's an absolute must as an entrepreneur. But I went ahead and I read that book, and what that book unlocked for me were some ideas that I was not privy to before. I knew I had to become a great photographer, but I hadn't really thought about the systems of how I would go and get clients, how I would serve those clients, how I would give those clients a Ritz-Carlton-like experience every single time in a consistent and predictable manner. And the E-Myth showed me that kind of framework, that blueprint. But I had a couple of options. I could either go and just figure it out myself and, break down what was in the book and just kind of guess and test and try to implement. Or E-Myth actually had a coaching program, which I realized I could work in a group coaching environment. They knew all of the frameworks. Obviously, the company was founded by Michael Gerber, who literally wrote the book. And I saw that as a shortcut, a way that I could invest some money to save time and get up to speed much quicker. Now, at the time, that investment was pretty significant. It was like $900 a month, which now looking back is kind of crazy that I could invest that little on a monthly basis and get that kind of a return. But I remember it because it was one of the first major fights that my wife and I had. We were brand new, newlyweds, no kids. We were just starting our business, and that $900 was kind of a big deal. And I remember us having a fight over it because I thought, oh, hey, this is a way to kind of speed things up and get us to our goal quicker in the business. And she saw it as an expense of $900 coming out of our bank account, which was already pretty slim pickings at the time. Needless to say, my wife is incredible and has always trusted me, and ultimately conceded and said, hey, I trust you. You think this is a good investment, go for it. And so I invested in the program. And one of my coaches actually shares this idea that the transformation happens at the transaction, meaning the second I made that decision to invest in that coaching program, the transformation actually already started to take place, because now the pressure was on. I had looked my new bride in the face and said, hey, I'm going to get a return on this. And because of that, because I had made that transaction, I approached things differently. I had a veracity about learning what needed to happen and applying what needed to happen in the business to go ahead and get a return on things. And I absolutely did that. And over the course of that first year, we went from having just kind of a couple of clients through word of mouth and referrals to we photographed more than 30 events in that first year, made 6 figures, my first time ever in my early 20s. And it was all a result of having a blueprint and a coach guide me through that along the way. So you can imagine if that's how I started my entrepreneurial journey. And up until that point, by the way, I had attempted and started a number of other businesses in my late teens and early 20s. Not a single one of them succeeded. This was the first win that I actually had, and I attributed a lot of that to finding someone who had done what I wanted to do, and they gave me the blueprint and then literally walked me through it. And so that became a pattern that over the last now, it's been 19 years since I first hired that coach with eMyth, where I've hired a number of coaches over the years. One of my favorite authors is Dr. Benjamin Hardy, and he wrote a book with Dan Sullivan called Who Not How. The premise of the book is when you're trying to grow a business, when you're trying to solve a problem, it's not your job to go and figure out how to solve it. It's actually your job first to find the who. Who can actually solve that problem? And then they will have the how. And there's no faster way to do that than with a coach or a consultant. Fast forward probably about 10 years when I made my break from photography into digital marketing, and we were growing the agency over at Strike Point Media, and we were wanting to kind of make some big moves. We're really looking to kind of take things to the next level. And that's when my buddy and our CEO, Jeremy, found a mastermind with a guy named Todd Brown. Todd Brown is an OG in the direct response marketing space, especially in financial publishing, has trained all of the media buyers at Agora Financial and has worked with some of the biggest names and brands out there and is behind all of them. And Todd had a mastermind, which was part of a coaching program. It was, at the time, I remember, it was $25,000. I have no idea what he's charging now, probably a lot more than that. But at the time it was $25,000 a year. And what you got for that was essentially 4 meetups a year. So once a quarter, you got to sit down with Todd and the rest of the group that was in the mastermind. And then throughout the year, there were a couple of check-ins and some other resources and things. But I remember when Jeremy came to the team and was like, hey, we're going to join this mastermind and this coaching group. And, I typically pretty optimistic. Brian, on the other hand, was very much kind of always looking at the numbers and the financials, and kind of like my wife did with the original idea around the eMyth coaching, kind of put up the yellow sign of like, hey, let's slow down. Let's talk through this a little bit first, because that seems like a lot of money for just 4 meetups. Just like in a good marriage, there was some trust in that partnership, and we said, hey, we're going to move forward with this. And Jeremy and I flew out to the first meetup for that mastermind. And from that first meetup, we ended up bringing back $30,000 in brand new business. So we had already paid for the entire year just from that first event, plus an extra $5K. And then those relationships and those strategies and playbooks that we basically picked up over the course of that year ended up turning into multiple 6-figure deals and ultimately multiple 7 figures in revenue over the lifespan of the company because of that investment. So when I say the fastest way forward is often through coaching, and why I'm so amped to start this new program tomorrow with a new coach tomorrow, it is because every single time I've seen it in any kind of major level up in my business or my client's business, it's usually come on the heels of finding the right who, not how, finding the who has the how, and then go ahead and jumping all in. And there's a couple of reasons why this is so critical and why it works. One, like I said, the transformation happens at the transaction. When you make that investment, you're telling yourself, okay, my business is worth this and I better get a return on it. So you're more likely to show up and do the work than when you're just, reading a $25 book or going through somebody's free lead magnet. When you pony up 20, 30 grand or a couple grand a month here and there, or whatever it is for a particular program or a coach, then you're a lot more likely to show up and do the work. But the second principle that's at work here, which is probably even more powerful, I know is even more powerful, is that if you want to attract better clients, you have to become one first. And for any kind of business, if you are selling services, I sell services, you're selling some kind of service, then what kind of buyer are you when you're going and buying other people's services? Now, as I was in my late teens, kind of starting some of those initial businesses, I ended up waiting tables a lot. I worked in restaurants and was also actually a snowboard instructor for 4 years. So I kind of chased the snow, worked at some of the resorts, waited tables, worked in some breweries and things. And I'll tell you, after being a server, my experience being a patron at a restaurant drastically changed. I had grace for servers in a different way than I did before. And I also had different expectations going in. But I knew the kind of people that I liked to serve when I was a waiter. So I tried to be that kind of person when I showed up to a restaurant. And the same thing is true in business. How can you expect your leads and clients to respond in the way that you want them to respond when you reach out after their inquiry, to buy without all of this rigorous back and forth and objections? I want you to think of your favorite kind of clients, the ones that come to your world, realize right off the bat the value that it is that you provide, and realize that, yeah, there's a cost, there's an investment to get that service from you, but they make a decision quickly. They jump in and they're all about it. Those are the kind of clients that we all want more of. And so you've got to be one of those kinds of clients. And there's no better way to do that than when you actually hire other service providers, when you go and hire a coach. Now, I'm not saying to just go find any random coach willy-nilly. It's all about understanding what's the bottleneck in your business, what's the next thing that you want to tackle. That's why this coach that we're working with tomorrow, we're jumping into working with. I'm super excited because we've had, for the past couple of years, a very heavy agency done for you tech business where we handle all of the kind of marketing tech for service providers. And we're actually moving to more of a done with you coaching model. And this particular coach is literally the best in the world at that, has worked with all of the biggest coaches out there from, Dan Martell, Ryan Dice, you name it. He's minted all of these guys. And so when I realized, we're making this shift in our business, I want the best of the best. The guy that has had success helping people like me make the kind of change that I want to make in my business. And because that's the kind of clients that I want coming to us. I want service businesses coming to us who realize, hey, I need a system. I need a better acquisition system. I don't want to have to fuss with all of my marketing tech. I just want the right marketing to make sure that I'm turning more of that attention that we're bringing into our business into leads and clients. And I want a system that's going to do that consistently and predictably. Those are the clients that I want. So I aim to be that kind of client as well. So if you're, considering coaching, if you're on the fence about it, I don't want you to think about what is it going to cost you. I want you to think about what is it going to cost you to not do it. And this is not some pitch for my coaching program, but this has been a pattern that I have seen lead to success over the last 19 years. And that is that in order to get more of the kind of clients that you want, you got to be that one first. And coaching is often the best and fastest way to, once you have a problem, find someone who already has the answer and let them guide you on the way to success. So if you want to grow faster, move more quickly with fewer blind spots, then I would suggest looking for that next room that you want to get in and who you want to get in around that can help you navigate that. All right, we'll see you in the next video.